from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up today on Ag Day, as the Farm Bill draws focus from the White House, it's the great divide between parties that could be the biggest obstacle this year.
I've seen major differences in individual, program provisions, but not the visceral animosity almost between the committee chairman and the ranking member.
In agribusiness, the complexity of the cattle market between the cash price and what producers see on the board.
Well, it's the puzzle that everybody's trying to put together right now.
And cap and gown time at colleges across the country. Is your student ready for the world?
Ag Day, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Tyne Morgan in for Clinton Griffiths. He'll join us later on the show. Well, on the heels of a meeting at the White House focused on ethanol, the president now has his sights set on the Farm Bill. And those sights could also come with strong demands. The president calling for a Farm Bill meeting at the White House Thursday morning. Farm Journal Washington correspondent Jim Wiesmeyer reporting the president will meet with ag leaders from both chambers, as well as Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue and National Economic Council Director Larry Kudlow. Reports say the meeting is to not only discuss timing of a Farm Bill, but also outline demands. The Wall Street Journal reporting that the president is threatening to veto the bill if the Farm Bill does not include tighter work requirements for SNAP. And it's that demand that could even bring more intensity to the battle over food stamps. Now, farmers and ag groups are also concerned with what happens to crop insurance. In February, the president called for a 33% cut to the program as part of his budget package.
I think top of the mind for most farmers is making sure that we have the provision for crop insurance in there. A lot of us are surviving without any subsidies or yearly subsidies to speak of, so as long as we can have that crop insurance provision in the Farm Bill, I think most farmers will be happy with that.
But it's SNAP that could be the major hurdle for getting a Farm Bill passed this year. SNAP currently serves more than 40 million people annually, and it's the Democratic votes that the legislation may need to cross the finish line this year. I recently talked to Wiesmeyer in Washington about not only timing of the Farm Bill, but why the food portion of the bill is drawing so much scrutiny right now. Jim, we've seen the House's version. We have not seen the Senate version of the Farm Bill yet. Is that coming?
Yeah, it looks like the Senate markup session will be probably in early June after the Memorial Day recess, and then it'll clear the committee. There's bipartisan, support there. Then the Senate floor debate will be sometime later in the summer.
So you think there will be more bipartisan support for the Senate version of the Farm Bill?
Oh, clearly, yes, because you have to have it because they need 60 votes in the Senate to invoke cloture, stop debate. Avoid a filibuster. And inherent in that, in the Senate Ag Committee, they don't have the constraints that the House does relative to the food stamp program language. The House wants pretty major reform in food stamps. The Senate does not. Very major reform in food stamps, and we saw that really strike a very partisan vote. Have you ever seen the Farm Bill debate within the House be toe such party lines? I've seen major differences in individual, program provisions, but not the visceral animosity almost between the committee chairman and the ranking member. It got very surly, and it's still in that process. We've had some, again, experiences in the past, but this one beats them all. So real quick, do you think the Senate version and the House version that we can come up with a compromise? The biggest thorn for a conference report will be, can they find a compromise language for food stamp reform? If they can, then you'll have a Farm Bill by the end of the calendar year. That does not rule out after the election vote. If they can't, we're on to a one-year extension. Right now, if you were a betting man, one-year extension or a 2018 Farm Bill? I go hope. I'm always hopeful that you gain nothing by waiting for a one-year extension. It doesn't solve anything. So hopefully they'll be able to compromise in good faith, but that good faith may have to come after the elections. Okay, Jim Wiesmeyer, Farm Journal Washington correspondent, thank you so much.
Well, some ag groups are continuing lobbying their pro-ethanol positions after a meeting Tuesday at the White House between the president and key senators. Betsy Gibbon is here with more. Betsy?
Tyne, most ag groups, senators from ag states and companies saying most of the news, including E15 year-round and no caps on renewable identification numbers or RINs, is a positive.
If we go to E15 across the country, that could be another 78 billion gallons of biofuels that's blended into the fuel supply. Full implementation of E15 would be another 2 billion bushels of grain demand.
But would E15 really be the demand boom to drive corn prices higher? Energy expert Pete Meyer is not so sure.
We're going to allow E15 to be sold year round. That's great, and that's that's somewhat of a positive. But really, that on its own really only adds, according to our calculations, less than 1% more demand by adding E15 year-round.
In the past, EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt has been verbal whether the Environmental Protection Agency has authority or if the administration should implement E15 year-round. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, who was at the meeting, says President Trump ordered Administrator Pruitt to make E15 happen year-round.
And Pruitt said without hesitation that we can do it, meaning EPA can put out the regulation.
The White House meeting also discussed the possibility of putting RINs on exported ethanol. Some in the ethanol industry question the legality if that can actually happen.
The RFS is a domestic market-forcing blend policy, which means to comply with this mandate, you must blend the biofuels into domestic gasoline. But if you export a gallon of ethanol or any other biofuel, it by definition cannot be blended domestically, and therefore it cannot count towards the domestic blend mandate.
Critics say if RINs on exports happen, the World Trade Organization could possibly rule the RIN as an unfair export subsidy. They also say if RINs on exports are a done deal, it could potentially be challenged in court, since the current RFS rule is to increase domestic consumption.
Seems to me an idea that should die a quick death, and if it doesn't, I can't imagine it wouldn't die of a quick legal challenge because it's so obvious.
Grassley says E15 year-round and no caps on RINs are both good news for the ethanol industry.
Well, storms moved through sections of the Central Corn Belt Wednesday, just as some farmers wrapped up planting 2018. Mike Hoffman has an update and crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Tyne. As long as it doesn't turn severe, a little rain shouldn't hurt some of the crops which have emerged in Georgetown, Illinois. We visited Doug Kirk, who wrapped up all of his planting on Tuesday. Doug says emergence looks good on his earlier planted crops. He hopes that pattern will continue for his other fields. Matt Fulmer in Star City, Indiana has finished planting for the season as well. He sent us this view and said, "The last sunset I'm going to see for plant 2018. According to the latest crop progress report, 42% of corn acres and 23% of soybean acres have been planted in Indiana. Both stats are now above the 5-year average. And taking a look at the wind speed forecast, multiple pockets from the eastern Great Lakes through the Plain States will be windy this morning. You can see that picks up in the Four Corner region as we head through the afternoon hours. So lots of places across the country are going to have some wind. Tomorrow morning, it'll mainly be in the plains, and then that will develop once again in the southwest and spread a little bit into the Ohio River Valley. We'll have your forecast coming up, but first here are some hometown temps.
Plan for the unexpected with weather forecast updates. Local forecasts are delivered right to your cell phone each morning, making planning a little bit easier. Just text Weather 6 to 31313 to get started.
Next in agribusiness, the ups and downs of the cattle market. And from our partners at Drovers, setting a time frame for a sustainable beef industry, plus life after college.
I'm Charles Denny. It's graduation time here at the University of Tennessee. What's it like being a modern-day college student? Time-consuming and maybe tougher than you think. That story from Knoxville, Tennessee, coming up on AgDay.
The cattle market sending mixed signals, but is trade watching supplies or demand? Clinton Griffiths joins us now from the agribusiness desk.
John Payne, publisher of the newsletter This Week in Grains and Oilseeds. John, as we talk about the cattle market, let's talk about the livestock side of things. Boy, this cattle market has been kind of dynamic, and everyone is watching cash price versus board price. What's your take on what we're seeing in the disparity here?
Well, it's the puzzle that everybody's trying to put together right now. Probably the most popular trade that's being mentioned on our desk is, how does this resolve itself? So you're starting to see early June bids come in Kansas, Texas, even up north into Nebraska, 122, 125 in that area. A lot of folks that I work with think they'll come in higher here in the shorter run, with the board down at 106. So from somebody who manages risk for a living and tries to work with folks who are participating, how do you tackle that from a standpoint of risk management? You have somebody with animals walking around in a feedlot worth 125 on the cash market, yet the board is down at 106. So we're starting to see a lot of folks come in and want to buy that deferred contract, and a lot of interest in that. And I don't blame them. I really don't. I think that would be the play, to either liquidate the herd and buy futures or simply try to play that spread somehow. But as we know, this isn't a team event, and sometimes when I see those trades come in, I question, is it going to work out that way? It almost seems like too much of a no-brainer to me. Yeah. So if we see that cash stay high and the futures converge higher, I think feeders, and specifically those fall contracts, will take a jump maybe into the 150, closer to 160 level. At that point, that's where you get to work on the hedge side.
Yeah, interesting. The driver behind the cash price, is that all demand driven as we kind of gear up for grilling season and all of that?
Well, I think that's part of it. I mean, this is a seasonal time of the year. We tend to see the choice in the select cutouts rally, but I think the board is focusing a lot more on the trade disputes, NAFTA being one of them.
Sure.
And you know, if that gets resolved, I think maybe we get some influx of push in money to the board. But it was this way a little bit in April. I mean, we were maybe $7, $8 under, but right now we're $20 under, depending on where you're looking at that cash price. And for us, it's an opportunity, but it's also one of those times where you almost do too much analysis and you scratch your head and say, well, why wouldn't this work? It has to work, right? And sometimes that's not the way it works.
That's right. Appreciate it, John. Thank you for that.
Thanks a lot.
We'll be back with more AgDay in just a minute.
To find John's newsletter, This Week in Grain and Oilseeds, head over to www.thisweekingrain.com.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Time now for a check of weather. Mike, we knew there were some rainmakers that made their way across the country this week. Has slowed down planting for some.
Yeah, there will be some more. A lot of it's going to be in the northern tier of states from the Corn Belt northward, so that's what we'll be watching. As you can see on the map this morning, we do have a system off the northeast coast. Maybe eastern New England gets some rain out of that, probably will in places anyway. Secondary system over the Great Lakes and a third one over the northern Rockies. Putting the maps into motion, you can see the cold fronts come south, but they don't bring a lot of moisture with them because high pressure is just going to be dominating across the northern part of the Gulf, which kind of suppresses all the moisture down that way. By later today, we will be seeing a few scattered showers and thunderstorms, mid-Atlantic states into South Carolina, and just a few hit and miss showers northern plains back into the northern portions of the Rockies. As we head into the morning hours tomorrow, though, we'll see some decent rain, showers and thunderstorms developing north of the stationary front across parts of the northern plains, northern Mississippi Valley into the southern Great Lakes by morning. And as we head through the afternoon hours, that will spread a little bit farther east, and we'll see some hit and miss activity developing southern Appalachians down into northern Florida. And the next system kind of developing along this stationary front is going to be causing some rain and mountain snows, only in the highest elevations though, as we head through tomorrow afternoon. All right, let's check precipitation estimates past 24 hours, mainly Great Lakes and the northern Rockies. Adding in the next 36 hours, that's going to be the main two areas again, but we will have that strip of moisture north of that stationary front. It looks like from South Dakota across parts of southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, kind of through that area. Most of the south stays warm and dry, and you can see that 80s and 90s for highs this afternoon, only 40s up along the Canadian border, so a little bit on the chilly side in the far north. Tomorrow morning we're looking at lows in the 30s to lower 40s. Sault Ste. Marie coming in at 33 on the computer models, but still pretty warm and muggy south of that front, and that's the same idea tomorrow. You can see that big difference across the front from north to south. Here's the jet stream. We do have that trough kind of moving through the Great Lakes in the northeast as we head toward the weekend. Cutoff low in the southwest may eventually bring some Pacific moisture into the southwestern sections. You can see other than that, there's really a pretty big zonal flow there with occasionally a little bit of cool air coming into the northern plains, northern lakes, and the northeast. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We head to Scottsbluff, Nebraska. First of all, partly sunny, an afternoon thunderstorm around, high of 81. Nashville, Tennessee, partly sunny, very warm, high of 88. And Greenfield, Massachusetts, a mixture of clouds and sunshine, the afternoon high around 74.
Still to come, coming up with a framework for a sustainable beef industry, details in our Drovers report. And later, is your soon-to-be college graduate ready for the real world? In news from our partners at Drovers, the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef has opened a 60-day public comment period on the group's sustainability framework. The framework is meant to provide resources to help all segments of the beef industry identify areas for improvement and implement changes. Drovers editor Greg Henderson says the initiative is intended to help all members of the beef chain.
The key areas identified by the Roundtable as being important to the sustainability of beef are referred to as high priority indicators. These include animal health and well-being, efficiency and yield, employee safety and well-being, land resources, water resources, and air and greenhouse gas emissions.
Henderson says the public comment period will end July 1st. Meanwhile, as threats of a 25% tariff on U.S. pork imports into China loom, the country is upping its inspections of U.S. pork. Now, according to Reuters, ports are inspecting every cargo that arrives. Some say the increased scrutiny is actually a warning sign from Beijing over a possible trade dispute. That's as talks between the U.S. and China are ongoing. The country also announcing it will inspect apples and logs from the U.S. Still to come, it's a cap and gown time at universities across the country. Have those 4 years or so in college prepared them for the real world?
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit KubotaUSA.com today.
Well, May is graduation month for students at the University of Tennessee and schools across the country. But to first earn a degree, students must put in years of hard work. And this report provided by UT Extension Charles Denny, he has more on the demands students face and what may be a changing image of college life.
You know you make me wanna kick my heels up and throw my hands up.
Animal House may be funny, but it's also fantasy. If this is your idea of what college is like, you may want to rethink the image. There's a social element to university life, but a student who does nothing but party usually doesn't stay a student for very long. Amy Morgan at UT's College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources will soon graduate with a degree in food and agricultural business. College has been fun, she's made great connections, but it's also been a lot of work.
But when I got to college, it's a whole different ballpark. And it's not just juggling your schoolwork, but it's also juggling your life and learning how to balance that without your parents.
And I really enjoyed talking and speaking with people, and I'm really passionate about agriculture.
Dalton Teal wants to create agricultural programs for inner-city schools. He's a junior now, but recalls the humor in one of his first tests as a freshman.
And I did what I typically did in high school, which was maybe look at some notes 30 minutes before the test. And I got back that exam score and I was like, holy cow, like something's got to change.
College students have incredible demands on their time, academics, professional internships, and many work to pay for school. Being a student is a full-time job and one that often goes beyond 40 hours a week.
So that tremendous responsibility to be working all the time at any time, I think puts extra pressure on them.
Sharon Couch, coordinator of student life and diversity programs for Kasner, believes being a college student today is as demanding as ever. There is a dark side. Some struggle with stress, and as many as 1 in 5 students experience anxiety and depression. Couch works to give students the support they need.
What I try to make sure that I do is prepare them by giving them resources in terms of time management, study skills, just how to get along with people.
So if you want a good laugh, watch Animal House. But if you want to know what college is really like, talk to an accomplished student. For many this graduation season, challenge accepted, challenge met. This is Charles Denny reporting.
College seems like just yesterday. Thanks, Charles. Well, that's all the time we have this morning. We're glad you tuned in. For all of us at AgDay, I'm Tyne Morgan. Have a great day in Farm Country.